When World War II finally came to an end, the 4 biggest victors divided it up into 4 occupation zones. These zones are pretty solid, but they have some weird things, like... But in this video, we will look at what happened with the American occupation zone. Why does it have these 2 small enclaves called Bremen and Bremerhaven? What purpose did they serve? How did they get them? And why did they even want them in the first place? In fact, they actually served a very important role, because without them, the US zone would be completely landlocked. Obvious enough. However, why would that be a problem? Well, that would mean relying on their allies' ports to bring in stuff, which the US didn't want, as that would mean adjusting to someone else's rules and regulations. What they wanted was their own port, so they could have full control over their supply lines and manage operations their way. But if we look at the map again, we can easily spot a problem. How would they get the supplies from here to here? Interestingly, under this arrangement, the Brits also gave the Americans free access over their territory, which might sound like the problem just shifted, but it didn't, since roads and rails are way more flexible and let the Americans run the transports themselves. That's why the US wanted them. However, how they acquired the territory is not as straightforward as you might think. You see, initially, in 1945, when they started occupying both Bremen and Bremerhaven, they also took some neighboring territories for security, as the Americans thought it would be a good idea to have control of the nearby coastline. But none of these extra territories or Bremen and Bremerhaven were officially part of the American occupation zone. They were still British, just under American administration, and America would eventually give back the extra territories, keeping only the 2 port towns. It was only 2 years later, in 1947, when the British and American zones were economically merged in what's called the Bi-Zone, that Bremen and Bremerhaven officially became the 4th state in the American occupation zone. This also restored Bremen's old claim over Bremerhaven, as Bremen were the one who founded it in 1827, but lost it during a land reform in 1939. But now, Bremen regained it all, as well as some extra territory because of the US occupation layout. And as Germany returned to self-rule in 1949, Bremen became one of the founding federal states.